You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Overall, editors of the Betoota Advocate on Desert Rock FM. Welcome back to the Betoota Advocate radio show, recording live here in Desert Rock FM studios. You're joined by myself, Clancy Overall, editor of the Betoota Advocate, and of course Errol Parker, editor at large. What's going on, Errol?
Look, mate, not a lot. Just looking forward to this week's interview, mate. I'm keen to learn a few things.
Yeah, learn a few things about an era, particularly, that we weren't really necessarily close to.
No.
And a lot of characters that, you know, we've never met. But today's guest has met them all, and he's done it all. And he's got quite a story to tell. Today's guest is a rapper, musician, raconteur, storyteller. I would definitely gas you up on that. Dancer, you reckon?
Yeah, never. Never.
And,
If you ever catch me on film dancing, delete it, but I'll be coming after you.
And I guess, too, maybe a bit of an educator.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's a few things that I've learnt about things that I never thought I would look about, or, you know, just from looking at your videos. You know?
Yeah, that's it.
Some good knowledge.
Yeah, I am an unintentional educator, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it.
And that's usually what happens when there's a story to tell. And we've seen it time and time again, you know, particularly in the literary world, when there's something that just drops on the table and it feels like something that was so close to you but so far away. And that's basically your story, Spanian. Thank you for joining us today, and let's have a yarn.
Sweet, let's go.
Now, Spanian, the first thing I want to kind of talk about is you've just released a book, Hood Life Unfiltered.
Yep.
Spanian. Mm-hmm. You go by one name. Is that something that's not a stage name? That's just a name you've picked up in your travels as a kid growing up in inner city Sydney.
Yeah, that's my street name.
Yep.
That's a name I've had since I was 14. Since I think it was the first or second time I went to boys' homes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got that name because being in like from a minority that isn't like represented well in. Obviously, first of all, my background's Spanish. I'm half Spanish, right? Yep. That's why I look the way I look. Mm-hmm. So when I went to boys' homes, someone asked me, because either they're tossing up, is he Turkish, is he Lebanese, the more common nashos, you know? Yeah. And if you are someone of a more common nasho where there's 4 or 5 of you at a time, you can't be called by that because you can't say, hey, Lebanon, because then everyone will look, you know what I mean? Yeah. But the way it is in jail, the way it is in boys' homes, and even in the street, is that if you're of like a peculiar background, if you're Spanish or Colombian or Jamaican or from Denmark, you just get called that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So someone there is Spaniard.
Yeah.
To be honest, originally it was Spaniard.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the Spanian isn't a Spanish person. Spaniard with a D is a Spanish person, right? And it was Spaniard. And for actually like a year or two, I don't remember precisely, I've referred to myself as Spaniard. So that's it. So I got that name in boys' homes, come out to the streets. I go, that's it, that's my name. Yeah. If it's my boys' home name, then it's my street name. Yep. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I call myself Spaniard, but then I just learned how generic Spaniard is and how much it associates with me with Spain. And I'm not from Spain, I'm Australian. Yeah. I'm full-blown Aussie.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm full-blown Aussie from, like, grew up, born in Camperdown Hospital. My parents are Bornie, like, I'm full Aussie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then I start watching, like, The Gladiator, that's Spaniard. Then they're talking about Rafael Nadal and the Spaniard. So, but I'm not being them. I have to change it. Mm-hmm. So, like, I wanted to change it enough where it still sounds the same. It's like it's not like you just give me a whole new name, but it's individual. Yeah. So I chuck the N on the end, Spanian. Rolls off the tongue better, and it's just me. There's no other Spanian. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You never wrote, you never did any of that, you never put up panels, never wrote your name.
As far as my graffiti life went, was tagging with a texter on a cell wall.
Yep.
That's it.
I tagged many cell walls in this period. If you go any jail, you might still see my name tagged up on a wall or scratched up in perspex on the clinic window or something like that.
Yeah.
But never like these people that take it as a culture, like walk around the streets with a spray can. No way. No, I was too busy. Yeah.
Now, speaking of Spaniard, Gladiator you mentioned.
Yep.
Sounds like there's 2 Spaniards from Woolloomooloo. Because Rusty's down there on the wharfs.
Yep.
Which brings us to my next point, where you're from.
Yep.
You said there you're born in Camperdown Hospital. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your life and where you would call home. And I understand that's a fluid idea. You could actually call a few places home.
Right, so I was born in Camperdown, Sydney City. The first areas I lived in is the Marrickville, Dulwich Hill area. So little kid, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, running around there. Mm-hmm. I feel like at that age, where you grow up doesn't become a part of you because you're home. You're home all the time.
Yep.
So it doesn't really matter where you grow up. When you start hitting the streets of a certain place and you pick up the mannerisms and the culture of that place, I feel like that is what makes you you.
Yeah.
When that age starts happening, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, I had already moved to the Glebe area, Ultimo,
Yep.
right? We've
Yeah.
got City West Flats, which is it's like a privatised, subsidised housing sort of thing in Ultimo, near Broadway Shopping Centre. And so I feel like that's where I got my culture, my ways from. So I would say I'm from Sydney City.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I would not, never, if someone asked me, I'd never say, oh, yeah, I'm from Marrickville.
Yeah,
I don't know nothing about it. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's just the tattoo on your chest also is a good indication of...
Yeah, the Woolloomooloo. Yeah, and out of all to say, like, Woolloomooloo wasn't even the first place I hung around. So obviously moving to Glebe, I went to Glebe High. It was obviously Glebe. Then it became Waterloo, Redfern. Then it became Woolloomooloo. Probably in like the third year that I lived in the city, maybe when I was like, say 15 years old or something. And I just feel out of all the hoods in the city, you got to understand too, the hoods in the city, right? The entire city, which is made up of maybe 12, 13, 14 suburbs, is probably the size of one Western Sydney suburb.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so I can say like, oh, but Ultimo, it's 3 suburbs to Wolloomooloo.
yeah.
You gotta go through Darling. It's one street.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like 5 minutes walk. You've walked through 3 suburbs.
Yeah, yeah.
So really, if you think about it, if you're from one, you're from all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah. But most of my time, most of the ways I've been taught by the older boys, the emphasis on making money and a lot of my like street tactics, they come from the older Woolloomooloo boys more than any of the other suburbs. So I feel like, and there is an individual culture to Woolloomooloo. It's not much different, but you know, all the little suburbs in the city are a little bit different. I just felt the most at home there. That's why if you ask me specifically, I'll say I'm from Woolloomooloo.
Yeah.
But anyone else, I'll say I'm from Sydney City.
Yep.
You know, yeah.
Well, then we get to this, everything's informed by where you're from and where you're at. Your name, your suburb, your tats. Mm-hmm. You said the older boys in Woolloomooloo and Redfern taught you how to make money. Now, this is all in the book. This is a past life. Mm-hmm. How would you make a bit of money growing up in those areas?
Me specifically or everyone?
Well, what did you learn and what
All right.
helped you?
So started out, as soon as we learned how to steal cars, the door was open to break and enters. Mm-hmm. The first way I started making, as soon as we learned how to steal cars, the only cars we could steal were, so this was around the year 2000,
Yeah.
right? And we were stealing any Ford or Mazda.
Sounds like an AU Falcon.
Not Falcons though.
Yeah.
All right. So Ford Telsters, Ford Lasers, Mazda 323s, Mazda 626s, RX7s, MX6 turbos. Those cars are like sister cars of each other. I think they're from the same company.
Yeah.
They had this ignition that you could easily pick apart with a flathead screwdriver. Anyway, one of the older boys taught us how to steal that. The world opened up. Anywhere there were computers, we'd break into it, we'd steal it. That was the first way that I was making money.
You write in your book, the moment the older boys taught you how to steal that certain ignition, that certain car with that certain make, you never caught the bus again.
Yeah, that's it. True. Never. Like, I'm not going to exaggerate. I swear, I tell people, like, there'll be days me and Columbia would steal, like, we'd just go hard out. We'd steal like 4 or 5 cars a day.
Yeah.
We'd steal a car a new car because the old one ran out of petrol. We didn't drive like, conservatively. So so a 93 Ford Laser would overheat after 5 minutes of my driving. As soon as smoke comes out, steal the next one we see because it's so easy. So definitely no buses.
Yeah.
It's just you wake up, you steal a car, and you get on with the day.
Yeah.
So can you talk us through, like, say you came across like a 1999 Ford Laser? What's the process that you'd go through? Like, is it the screwdriver in the door lock first, and then whack, and then
Screwdriver
twist?
in the door lock.
Yeah.
And lever it upwards.
Yeah.
That would lift the little lock thing inside on the door. Door's open. That takes about, I don't know, averagely that'll take about 7-8 seconds. Then there's the ignitions are made out of aluminium, really weak aluminium.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of peeling off the layers that expose the barrel and then levering at the barrel. It's just as simple as that. So there'd be this, like, the bigger outer shell pops off. It's simply put a flathead screwdriver in it, push down, it pops off. They pop off like lids, like pasta sauce. They just pop off, Then there'd be another, like, it'd just be like 3 of those.
Yeah.
Then it'd be this little pin. You have to lever the little pin out. Then you can, with your finger, pull the entire barrel, which is the key shape
Yep.
on it, the barrel.
Yep,
And
yep.
once you pull the barrel out, anything can turn the ignition.
yeah.
And the good thing about that is, the best thing about that is that it's one of the only ways to steal a car that you don't have to break the steering lock.
Yep.
So any other ways you steal cars, like say, there's even other cars we could steal, but we wouldn't. So
Yeah.
we steal like VN Commodores and Hyundai Excels. They're very common to steal, you know. And because you're not going through that process, because the car doesn't recognize you starting it as the key, because you're like going underneath to the wires,
Yeah.
the steering is still locked. And breaking the steering sometimes takes like 2 or 3 boys, like, yes, legit.
Yeah.
And they're hanging outside. So they're hanging out like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
in someone's driveway. And they've got like 2 feet on the steering wheel and they're turning it. It's very hard. Then all of a sudden I would just go bang. And then it's a lucky dip, because sometimes you break you actually break the steering,
yeah.
and then it doesn't steer. But so this way you could do this in complete silence. And that's
Yeah.
the hardest part, breaking the steering lock, and you didn't have to do that.
So if your car didn't go missing in the inner suburbs of Sydney around the Olympics
go to
era,
work,
this is exactly what went down.
Yeah.
Now we want to talk to you now. You've got us. You've got our attention. I've read the book. You've got the car. You're in the hot vehicle. You call them hotties. Mm-hmm. That said, that opened a whole nother avenue.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're not going to make any money off the vehicle you're in.
No. You're not going to make money off the vehicle you're in. You're going to use that to what you call it, pump up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like, just go and make money. Mm-hmm. Because what are you going to make on foot? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't carry stuff. You can't really get away from anyone.
Yeah.
You can make money on foot. Don't get me wrong. Like later down the line, I stopped doing that type of crime because I just don't. I feel like the risk to reward ratio isn't worth it.
Yeah.
And there is much more quieter in the shadows on foot crime that I found out about down Woolloomooloo.
Yeah.
But in these days, back up Waterloo, that as soon as done that, like the first like things we really targeted were anywhere that had Apple Mac computers.
Yeah. So
yeah.
like Bob Carr era, all those schools.
Yeah. So they were, I think they were called G3s. They were all see-through, and they were just different colours, like see-through lime green
the
and
colour,
like,
the fatbacks.
those things. Yeah.
Like the computer in Zoolander.
Yeah.
Has, like,
Yeah,
blows
like
the
that.
thing
Yeah,
off
that's
the-
it. Yeah. Yeah, so like we just randomly got them one night, and wouldn't say he's our mate, someone from school, his older brother seen us with him. He's like, my friends will buy them. Like, they were like, really wanted. And I think we got 300 each for them, but we only had like 3.
Yeah.
But like nearly even schools, like what kind of security do you really expect to be on a 2001 high school? None.
None.
You can walk in, there's no motion sensors.
Yeah.
You literally lean and pressure pop a door.
Yeah.
And the door will open. And then an alarm will go off that will take 20, 25 minutes for people to show up. And right in front of you on the desk will be maybe 8 or 10 of these.
Yeah.
300 each. Even if you grab $1,500 for a 14, 15-year-old kid. Mental.
It's a lot of money.
With almost no risk of getting done. The risk wasn't even in doing that. The risk wasn't even in the break and enter. The risk was in being in a stolen car.
Yeah.
So it was more the worried about if the coppers see you in a stolen car, because there's no one going to see you breaking into a school or something like that, you know?
So what was your biggest haul when you were on the fatback Apple, the first Apple computers?
I don't know if I talked about this in the book, to be honest.
It's an exclusive.
I'm going to change the number to close to it, right?
Yeah.
We got, this is close, 10% near the number. We got 28 laptops by chance out of a high school. You're talking back, what's my biggest haul in these days?
No, in an evening.
But back in these days, in the future it's much different. But back in these days, we walked into a school and it randomly had a storeroom full of like laptops. So we got 28 of them with the chargers, and so we got pretty good. Like,
so you're 15
grand,
15 years old.
Yeah.
Who are you selling this shit to? This is because that's another element of crime. This is on the streets, right?
Yeah.
There's tiers, and it goes bigger and bigger and
like
bigger.
You can't keep going back to cash converters and being.
Oh, no, never. I've never sold a thing in my life to.
Yeah.
Every hood in the city has Vietnamese people that are more than willing to buy anything you buy, and it's limitless.
Yeah.
It's absolutely limitless. Like, I've seen older boys than me come back with so much stuff from their nights of searching when they would do they do over big offices in Sydney City. They jiggle elevators and go to the top. This is not something I've done. This is the older boys that taught me other stuff. They'd go, this was a thing in like late 90s, early 2000s, and they'd go jiggle elevators and they'd come back with like 50 grand worth of stuff, and those Vietnamese people would have the money to produce that. It's like, I'll give
Yeah,
you
yeah.
38 grand. The boys would walk off 38 grand. And they just have a room full of like an office.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I don't know what they used to do if it,
Yeah.
they used to send it back to Vietnam or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's almost like it's at its essence a victimless crime, because really the only people who are losing out are the kids of some yappy and and the state government. You know?
Yeah, and even those kids would be losing out very temporarily. They'd
Yeah,
be replaced quick smart, especially
Yeah,
around the
yeah.
eastern suburbs where we were doing it.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. Now, no one really looks at the inner city of Sydney or a lot of these cities. Melbourne still has quite a very visible kind of inner city thing going on, just because they never really...
There's a lot of people live in the city in Melbourne.
And there's a
right?
lot more suburbs in Melbourne too, because, they don't have a harbour in the middle of it. So they've got all these suburbs. But it's nowadays it's kind of hard to envision young kids getting around, with the keys to the kingdom themselves, really.
Yeah.
Where does a kid like you go to school? A household kid from inner city Sydney.
Yep.
There's not many, public schools going around anymore. A lot of these kids now, the gentrification's kind of pushed a lot of families out.
Yeah. Even back then, I really so I come to a stage because I got kicked out of Glebe High, right?
Yeah.
Living in Ultimo. The next school that I had to go to accept me was Dover Heights.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how scarce the schools are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
if you
that's
took
out near Bondi, eh?
Yeah, that's out near Bondi. It's
near Malcolm Turnbull country,
legitimately- Yeah, it's legitimately like
From
maybe
Broadway
10
to Bondi.
Yeah, 12
Bloody hell.
suburbs
Yeah,
in
right.
between.
Yeah.
Like 10, 12. That's how far we'd have to go. So there would only really be Glebe High. And Glebe High always had this association with Leichhardt High. So if you kicked out of Glebe, you kicked out of Leichhardt. They were sort of in a
Yeah.
way, I don't know what was going on. Like the teachers were like the same
They kept
teachers.
nuts.
Something, yeah. So there was
They shared
Glebe
nuts.
High. Then there was Cleveland Street High at Redfern.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to Dover Heights.
Yeah.
And Cleveland Street High being as notorious as it can get, I was like, hey, no, you're not going to Cleveland Street High.
Yeah, right.
That wasn't even an option. She's like, there's no way I'm sending you to Cleveland Street High.
Yeah, right.
Like, imagine going to Redfern High School in the year 2000
Yeah,
or
before the riots.
1999.
Before the riots.
Before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I mean. So that wasn't even an option. So I was catching a train and bus to rich
To the
people's
very
area,
end of
yeah.
the eastern suburbs.
Yeah. Up on the cliffs,
Yeah,
city
yeah.
views, yeah.
It's a bad place to go to school, isn't it?
And surprisingly, I wasn't the only one. So there's two schools over there, which are now combined into one. They've become Rose Bay Secondary College. It was Vaucluse High and Dover Heights High.
Yeah.
And there was like plenty of kids from Waterloo and Woolloomooloo going to those.
Yeah.
And because of similar situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild that they had a high school there, in
Yeah.
the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Which one?
Up at Vaucluse.
Vaucluse, yeah.
You
It
just
was.
associate it with grandmas, elderly Jewish
yeah.
mansions.
Yeah.
It was really in the middle of nowhere. And considering that Dover Heights is just down the street and was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
massive school, this was like right at the end, right across from the graveyard. It doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. But yeah, it was a pretty random school.
Yeah.
Now, we talk a little bit just then about gentrification, right? Obviously something that, spending as much time as you have inside boys' homes and prison, coming out, you would see the changes because you'd have the before and after, like a lot of people don't have. You know what I mean? If you're living in a suburb and it changes gradually, you notice it. Definitely not as noticeable as something
of
like
course.
What do you find? What has been like the biggest shock to you coming out and looking at the city now that you used to steal cars in and break into
right.
buildings?
The biggest shock definitely wouldn't be a visual thing
Yeah.
or a physical thing. It's definitely a cultural thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a
Yeah.
cultural thing. It's like it went from in 2 generations. So the age gap of maybe I don't know how generations actually work.
Mm-hmm.
The age gap of 10 years. So it went from people who are my age now, 35, to I look to the people that are 25 now. Everything that Sydney City was, in all the crazy ways that you would ever hear, in all the sad ways that you would ever see, was completely gone.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
people don't even talk the same.
Yeah.
And I'm talking like it's the same families.
Yeah.
It's the same kids of the same families that have always been here. But they're just completely different. Like Waterloo, Redfern, Glebe, Woolloomooloo especially, like it went from like the 70s was absolutely crazy. The 80s was like all the bank robbers were from Glebe and this and that. The 90s was the worst of the worst. You walked down Redfern or Glebe and you thought you was Mad Max.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Police wouldn't even go through those places. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Things on fire. And 2000s the same, but then just all of a sudden it's just like
Snapped.
yeah, they just well, it's good. I'm not saying it's bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's completely gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess, I think most of it changed down in Sydney when they got the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
And they were like, look, we can't have a bunch of tourists hopping off at Redfern and just immediately having their cameras
Relieved of them.
stolen from them.
Yeah.
They hand over their passport and their wallet. Do you reckon like a lot of what you're saying changed around the time of the Olympic Games? Like,
Police blitzes and stuff
I'd
like
say
that?
a bit. I'd say, look, the 90s, which is when I was a kid, too young to participate, but have visual memory of, was definitely worse than 2000s. The 2000s was very much, I would say, up until during the Olympics, it was definitely the same old city.
Yeah.
I would say up until about 2005. That's when, like, say 2000, when I got out once in 2006, 7, that was it. That was it, yeah. Oh, you know what I feel like my honest explanation is? The coppers, they just got too good.
Yeah.
All right? They just got too good. Like, there was...
Well, the technology changed too. They could see you all too.
Yeah. And it's natural that they're gonna win because these are people, that's their job.
Yeah.
They're healthy-minded people with a crazy budget and technology to fight us who are just like half the time we can't see straight. So like, how are they not going to win? I'm surprised they didn't win for all that time. But it got to the point, like say 2001, 2002, even 2003, you could do almost anything and get away with it. Almost anything.
So what would you say some of the most brazen shit you've seen? Like not even crime, like, or heist or anything like that. Like I read in your book where you guys get inside a car dealership.
Yep.
And you have basically the place to yourself. And I mean, I'm reading your book. I'm like, oh, this is gone in 60 seconds. This is going to be on this is going to be in cargo ship. This is going to be this is going to be in containers down in Port Botany. They're going to be sending them off to fucking wherever. And then you guys just basically steal one car to bash the gate open, and then steal whatever the coolest car is you can find each, and then pinball them around the city until they're like burn out, and you just leave them.
That's it. That's it. It was just fun. It wasn't a big thing. It was just another night. Yeah.
what was it like to get caught the first time?
Well, the first time I got arrested was in weird circumstances. I was after the school siege. So it wasn't really like I got caught for stealing and this and that. It was after that big school siege that I done in Dover Heights.
Yep.
So it was all like adrenaline all over the place. And
so this is real teenage shit too. You running around with knives and playing up in school. Yeah. So that was your first time you got given your number?
Nah, well, in juvie you do get numbers. They're not the same numbers as jail. You get a different jail. But that was the first time I got locked up and went into any type of detention. What was it like? It was a spin out. It was definitely a spin out. Being so young, I can't remember how I was, 14, barely 15, something like that. I think it was 2001. It was a spin out. Because you got no idea what it is, you know what I mean? And you get to juvie and it's like everyone was healthy and big and muscly, and you're with, like, it might not seem like a lot, 3 years difference, 4 years difference, but when you're 14, 15 and you're with healthy 18-year-olds, it's like you're locked in a cell with grown men. Yeah, it is. You know what I mean? It's like full different. So it's like you got to learn how to not get bashed. Yeah. You know what I mean? You got to learn how to not get bashed. Yeah.
So where would you say you learnt those skill sets? I mean, obviously you got the street smarts from just being on the ground, but you've got to be where you are, to be alive, to be out and about, and to have lived the life you've lived. You need to know how to, throw down, or how to, how to punch on, and how to fucking de-escalate as well. Also another skill. Where did you reckon you learn all that? Did you learn that inside?
When it comes to my method, when it comes to dealing with what you just referred to as beef. I don't have much time for beef, right? I avoid beef, really, right? It was never my thing to walk around it was never anyone's thing. This is a very different culture in the city. We're not a culture of people walking around as tough people. Like, we're not. You know what I mean? We're a culture of people that can make money in the streets and steal better than anyone. We're culture starters in style, and if beef gets too far, we're known to stab and sneak go people and stuff like that. Because the way we view it is that, the way I particularly view it too, is that we're not in tough guy contests. Like, you're in one life. And we're in these circumstances that we were put into not by choice.
Yeah.
And you get one life to live.
Yeah, yeah.
And we don't care much about that old Australian way. It's like, that fair go, one-on-one. It's like you go toe-to-toe. Don't do this, don't do that. Whatever anyone has this cultural idea of what a tough guy does in the streets. We do not care. I don't care what you think. I don't care if you think I'm tough. But I'm not going to start a fight with you.
Yeah.
If you start a fight with me and it's unavoidable, I will do anything to you, and you don't have to be looking. But whose fault is that?
Yeah.
But that's the way we look at it. Whose fault is that? It's like you may say to me, but how can you hit someone when they're not looking? How can you use a weapon? That's putrid. That's a low act. No, what's putrid and what's a low act is starting fights with people that don't want to fight you, and then getting hit when you're not looking because you weren't staying on your toes, and then blaming people for not following your rules.
Yeah.
That's what stupidity is. This is real life. People die from one punch. So the way we've seen it in the streets is we're not out. It's not a boxing match. You want to box? Go be a sportsman. This is the streets. I'll run you over. I'll stab you. I do not care.
So you reckon you went in as when you first time there, the Sydney Siege, you get pinched and you went in. Do you reckon you already had that in you, or you had a lot to learn?
Yeah. So it was all Well, look at the first thing I got locked up for is chasing everyone around for knives. So it was the siege. So I would say it was there, and it developed more and more. Yeah, it did.
So, how would you not get bashed upon your arrival incarceration? I mean, like as you were saying before,
in boys' homes when you're young, just stay out of people's ways. Don't express your opinion too much because you'll be challenged.
Yeah,
I say that's good enough. Yeah. It's not to the extent where you would let people do anything to you.
Yeah,
right. That's it doesn't go that far. You're not a pushover, but you just kick back and do your thing.
Yeah.
Until you're strong enough to accept any challenge and then speak your mind.
Yeah.
I've always just shut up.
How was your alleged offence perceived by your peers upon arrival in the boys' home? Like,
not many
were they
knew.
like?
Not many knew. I remember one of the older boys said, he goes, Anthony. And I looked at him, I go, yeah, bro. And he goes, was that you on the news at that school thing? And I said, yeah, bro, that was me. And he goes, fuck, you're just young. And I said, yeah. And he goes, I thought that was like, you look big on camera, like you were older. I said, no, it's just me. And he goes, fuck. And he thought I was funny.
Yeah.
No one else had a clue.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people know what you're in for. And you know what? It's like, I found in juvie, no one even cares what you're in for. In jail, there's a lot of talking.
Is that because you think a lot of kids are getting away from something just by being there in the first place, or do you think it's like no one really has a hierarchy of what is and isn't, a crime worth talking about?
I don't know. You know what? To try to explain it would be hard.
Yeah.
I don't know the reasoning, but I just remember you would never be in juvie talking about I got done for this, I got done for that, or he got done for this. And in jail, it's a bit like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In jail, it's a bit like that. To the extent that it goes is that I remember being at Baxter once and there were two, we didn't know till after, but this is just how blasé we are to it. There were two kids there with us, roughly my age, that were two of the kids that were involved in the rapes in the gang rapes,
Western Sydney,
Scaff. So his co-offenders that were juveniles were in juvie with us, and they were just treated like normal people. They were like in the wing with us. The youth workers, like they weren't in protection, and these people were measly. These two lads I'm talking about were absolute gronks. If people knew, but it's so blasé that we didn't even know that these were the two of the famous gang rapists.
Yeah.
But in jail, you'd know straight away. Impossible to not know.
Yeah, and those guys don't go in.
No, of course
jail.
not. No. Oh, well, they got their place. Yeah. They got their place. Yeah.
And we'll just end it there. That concludes part 1 of the Spanian interview with the Betoota Advocate. It's been long awaited, and we're very excited that we got the man in the booth. You can tell he's got a magnetic energy, and it's no surprise as to why he's become such a countercultural icon in Sydney and across Australia. It's all detailed in his new book, The Unfiltered Hood Life, Spanian. Now stick around for part 2 of this interview, where Spanian delves into his life and times in and out of jail as an adult, back on the streets, and the different crimes he got caught up in as he grew a little older in the harsh inner city streets of Sydney, which, as he has explained, have changed a lot in the last 10, 20 years.